and David DiPietro. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So Manafort reportedly signed a $10 million annual contract starting in 2000.
I think he still doesn't have a cause of action. I think it's how is the airline supposed to know what the body types of 315 passengers is going to be?
Well, he must have brought it to their attention, right? He said, look at these guys. They're right next to me. They're falling into me. And then look at me. I don't even know if this guy's a big guy himself or not. It doesn't strike me.
Right.
So
right. Too little, too late.
Right. Okay.
Too little, too late.
All right. So,
and this is how he acts and how he obtains his victims.
Yeah, well, and a lawyer for some of his alleged victims said it was like Christmas for him to be charged with these crimes. Esther, David, appreciate your all's insights. Obviously, the new year will bring a lot more information in this case, and we'll bring you back to talk about it. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Paperwork, any conflict waivers or disclosures that would have needed to be filed under federal law, that he actually did do that. Yeah, look at Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York. He lobbies and support or assists other foreign governments for a big law firm in New York City. It's common. People need access to our political system and the powers that be, because it's a big world we live in, not a little world. And as long as the appropriate disclosures and waiver conflicts were disclosed, and he's not receiving current income, shouldn't be a big issue. Might be a political issue for him, but overall not an illegality or a disqualifying factor in the long run, and really probably doesn't really go much further than this, other than more stories and bad political stories for the Trump administration as it relates to any relationships with the Russian government and Putin. So
yeah.
A bad political story, probably not a big legal issue going forward.
Yeah, about that political story, the Trump administration and Manafort himself had denied that Manafort ever worked for Russian interests. Philip, as you know, now we have an FBI investigation into Trump campaign ties to Russia. Is this
comedian Bill Cosby is out, is a criminal defense attorney. David DiPietro is a former prosecutor. David, first to you, Mr. Cosby admits that he had a sexual relationship with this woman. He admits that he at one point gave her these drugs that are akin to a date rape drug. Is this as open and shut of a...
You don't think there's a case? Why not?
This is a typical case why people hate lawyers. This is a ridiculous case. I would have never even taken the phone call if he would have called my law office. Entering into an agreement by purchasing a ticket is a contract, and if you had actually read the terms and conditions, which I know no one actually reads the terms and conditions, but it is an agreement. It says that he, the passenger, was supposed to advise the airline that he had a disability or health-related issues, and they have special seats and procedures set aside so that they can make sure that this passenger's accommodations are met. So the fact that he showed up and was next to two grossly obese people, there's no cause of action. I mean, what possibly could he come up with that would actually be actionable and have a jury actually say, yes, 2 years ago, now your back hurts, and I guess you can't do yoga anymore. I don't know. It's not like he was doing business with the Iranian government or something of that nature. I really don't think this goes much further than where it goes. I think the only declared enemy of the Russian nation and Putin is the Democratic Party. I don't think it's actually the United States of America, as far as I know. As far as I know, the relationship since the ending of Reagan's presidency has been all positive in a positive direction. So I don't see, other than the Democrats not happy with the email scandal, I don't know really where this goes, and the interlooping of it, probably the FBI will find nothing. That loose lips sink ships. He's completely admitted to this entire events. He admitted to the victim's mother, he admitted to the police, and he admitted in deposition, which was released in 2015, about the entire incident. There's not much in dispute. We know that the victim was at his home. We know that the victim was provided pills, and we also learned in the deposition that Bill Cosby gave Quaalude pills to other female partners that he had, and how he would pursue them and give them Quaaludes, and he wouldn't take the Quaaludes himself. The only thing really at issue is whether it was consensual or not. And looking at the facts of the case and looking at the credibility based upon what has already been provided, there's no doubt. And you give me a jury of 12 people, and I'll prove that there's no doubt that this sexual event was not consensual and that Bill Cosby is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Esther, to that point, once a woman has been given these drugs, Quaaludes is their call, but essentially they knock you out, render you semi-conscious here. The victim herself said she was going in and out of consciousness. Is it possible for an event like this to be consensual?
We want to bring in Dr. Tiffany Sizemore. She's an internist, board-certified cardiologist, and women's health expert.
These patients typically do have more risk factors to begin with. What we know is that it's just an increased amount of stress over the holiday season. Is this, the biggest lie of 2013? Now, you can keep your health insurance and you can keep your doctor, but I couldn't keep my patients. It's like a bad rerun of Jerry Maguire. Where are my patients? My patients have disappeared from me because they can't either afford their plan or I can't get on their plan as a practitioner of whatever insurance plan they have. That has to do with how long it takes the virus to really show itself. So you could have the virus and not even be having symptoms. People's deductibles and their out-of-pocket costs are through the roof. And the problem is most private practitioners like myself, we collect this money up front. We don't send them bills. After the first vaccine, there's about a 78% effectiveness of the vaccine. I think it's multifaceted because what we know is there's been a parallel increase in prescription drug death. First of all, I have to jump through 25 hoops of fire and a leotard to try and get them approved by these insurances. And then once they are approved and they have to go towards a deductible, you're looking at upwards of $1,200 for a nuclear stress test. It's unbelievable. Now, because there's no rules and regulations and having a pre-existing condition, he jumps into the exchange.
Sure.
And then all of the prices go up for everyone because now we're accounting for all these people who are jumping in at the last minute. But what it really boils down to is it's your gut feeling. If something's not right, call 911 and go to the hospital. Right. Because time is hard.
And our federal law allows prior bad acts as a modus operandi to come into evidence. So if this was a standard protocol, so to speak, for Bill Cosby to bring women into his home or into a private setting to drug them and then to have non-consensual sex, but you can't consent to sex if you're drugged and you're not conscious. So if this is his modus operandi, he can't say, oh, this is this one.
Can you imagine if Mueller was best friends with Trump and playing golf at Mar-a-Lago, and it had a long relationship through employment and friendship, and he was investigating Trump, the outrage it would be there. The fact is that the basic standard of ethics for executive employees would not allow Mueller to actually have this investigation. There's specific ethical codes that require employees of the federal government, which Mueller is now an agent employee of the federal government, to avoid impartiality in the execution of any duty, in particular an investigation. So at this point, he has no choice but to disqualify himself from this case.
Well, David, what if he doesn't? Because
I'm not really sure what Jill Stein's up to other than a little bit of a rabble-rousing. I think even Ms. Clinton's camp and her general counsel has acknowledged that really if Ms. Stein wants to participate in a recount and fund it, they'll show up and they will be part of it. But really, they don't have any reasonable expectation that the results of the election will change.
But the media was nowhere to be found. There was no articles. There was no nonstop coverage of this. Her investigation should have been a year ago, and the fact that it's finally happening is, well, thank God that's actually going forward for transparency in our government, regardless if it's Republican or Democrats. Everybody should be held to a high standard when they're administering our government for our citizens and our population. So I'm glad it's going forward. Otherwise, it would be investigations would be only of conservatives and Republicans, right, and Democrats and liberals would get this wonderful pass. So well, I mean, if you're going to go into government, register as a Democrat.
To a credit, Dianne Feinstein.
Attorney David DiPietro, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Schumer says the qualifications for Senate confirmation should not be skillful evasion of questions. It's not how the process is supposed to work. That's his quote. David, is it appropriate, though, for Gorsuch, a Supreme Court nominee, to give his opinion on specific court decisions and political controversies?
He can't. The judicial canons don't allow a judge to predetermine how they're going to rule on a particular case. That's the whole reason for having an independent judiciary with an open mind. I think Gorsuch, they're upset that he has such a stellar resume.
Two outcomes can happen. One, if he goes forward and the conclusion is against the White House, the investigation's tainted and it starts to lack value and credibility. If he clears the White House, then I guess everybody goes on back to business. So if this is going to truly be an independent investigation, he's a lawyer representing the United States population and people.
and his loyalty and his duty of impartiality is
Right.
tied with the U.S. people. He needs to fulfill that obligation. He shouldn't be on this case, and the Department of Justice, the deputy DOJ, should ask him to step down, plain and simple.
Gina,
They're going on the attack. It's a political bad move for the Democratic Party. He's not the guy to attack. This is a one-for-one. Scalia for Gorsuch. There's no reason to attack a guy or a judge, I should say, with an impeccable record. It's all going to fall back. And I think we're going to know real quick, because there's 20 people on the Senate Judiciary, 11 are Republicans, 9 are Democrats. If he pulls out 8 out of the 9 on that committee, it's over. He'll have 60 votes in the 52 Republicans and then 8 more Democrats in the Senate, and it's game over. And if not, the nuclear option apparently is becoming more and more on the table as Harry Reid changed the rules for everything except Supreme Court nominees. This might just change that rule, and we might go to 51 majority for Supreme Court picks, and that might be the future that leads Senate confirmation process.
All right.
Like Trump should not get involved in a Nevada recount if one were to happen, because even those numbers of her win would be a historical flip-flop in a recount.
One of the factors is whether she willingly did this, and if she was under coercion, duress, abuse, that's going to negate the element of the willingness or the intentional act.
I want to bring in Dr. Tiffany Sizemore. She's an internist, board-certified cardiologist, and women's health expert.
These patients typically do have more risk factors to begin with. What we know is that it's just an increased amount of stress over the holiday season. Is this, the biggest lie of 2013? Now, you can keep your health insurance and you can keep your doctor, but I couldn't keep my patients. It's like a bad rerun of Jerry Maguire. Where are my patients? My patients have disappeared from me because they can't either afford their plan or I can't get on their plan as a practitioner of whatever insurance plan they have. That has to do with how long it takes the virus to really show itself. So you could have the virus and not even be having symptoms. People's deductibles and their out-of-pocket costs are through the roof. And the problem is most private practitioners like myself, we collect this money up front. We don't send them bills. After the first vaccine, there's about a 78% effectiveness of the vaccine. I think it's multifaceted because what we know is there's been a parallel increase in prescription drug death. First of all, I have to jump through 25 hoops of fire and a leotard to try and get them approved by these insurances. And then once they are approved and they have to go towards a deductible, you're looking at upwards of $1,200 for a nuclear stress test. It's unbelievable. Now, because there's no rules and regulations on having a pre-existing condition, he jumps into the exchange.
Sure.
And then all of the prices go up for everyone because now we're accounting for all these people who are jumping in at the last minute. But what it really boils down to is it's your gut feeling. If something's not right, call 911 and go to the hospital.
Right.
Because time is heart.